Is the Constructors' title lost for Ferrari? Perhaps. In Formula One, mistakes are unforgiving when it comes to crunch time. The Maranello team should have done better much earlier, arriving at the final two races with a 24-point deficit, considering the unfavorable layouts ahead, could not have led to a different outcome than the one observed. The 3 months wasted trying to fix a car that refused to stay on track shattered Ferrari's dreams. It was during that period that the Prancing Horse lost its chance to fight for the championship. Without that non-evolution of the floor, developed under the technical direction of Italian aerodynamicist Enrico Cardile, Ferrari would now be competing for both titles with a strong chance of winning. Unfortunately, we know how it turned out. Once again, as has often been the case for many seasons, the Italian team lost its way. They strayed from the correct development path of the car, a recurring situation that always leads to the same result: losing. This is something Frederic Vasseur must address. If Ferrari wants to triumph in the 2025 Formula One season, these dynamics must be eliminated. Let's look at the facts. Ferrari failed to improve its performance. In the second F1 qualifying session of the weekend at the 5.419-kilometer Lusail International Circuit, it was behind McLaren, George Russell's Mercedes, and even a relentless Max Verstappen with his RB20. The session yielded a result few expected. McLaren took a step back while Red Bull made significant progress, successfully refining their setup. Ferrari exhibited the same problems seen on Friday, albeit to a lesser extent. Analyzing the onboard footage of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, an understeering behavior was evident on corner entry. This characteristic is easily noticeable. The drivers turned the wheel to hit the apex, but the steering angle was larger than necessary. They struggled to reach the inside curb with the front sliding outward. Essentially, the Ferrari drivers had to adapt their driving style to the car, rounding off the corners. The excessive lack of rotation led to overheating of the front tires. The reason is simple. As the car slides outward, tire temperatures rise due to increased friction, causing the tread temperature to spike. Both Ferrari cars started their laps with temperatures near the target range, but as the lap progressed, the front axle quickly overheated. Temperatures deviating from the optimal range resulted in an incorrect contact patch, which directly depends on tire pressure. This characteristic worsened throughout the lap, significantly limiting performance. McLaren was nearly perfect, although they too showed a slight lack of rotation, less pronounced than Ferrari's. The two MCL38 cars maintained high minimum speeds mid-corner, a critical factor that made a significant difference, as predicted in previews earlier in the week. Tire management was less complex for McLaren, as Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris could push harder during their laps. The historic British team lost pole position in the first sector, likely due to their tires not yet being in the optimal temperature window. They aimed to start the lap below target to have the tires reach optimal values by Sector 3. This strategy cost them pole to George Russell's Mercedes. Observing the W15's performance, it displayed a tendency toward oversteer. At the apex, the rear was less stable, forcing the drivers to make minor corrections and sometimes widen their lines. This required careful handling. Ultimately, it was a matter of balance. Despite this, Mercedes showed it could generate significant downforce with its floor. George Russell delivered a masterclass in the middle sector, improving Max Verstappen's already excellent time by half a tenth, though the Dutchman was later penalized. However, in the final part of the Qatari track, the W15 struggled, with the rear overheating and requiring racing line adjustments. George Russell, however, was flawless, a brilliant performer compared to his Mercedes teammate. Max Verstappen's magic lap comes as a bitter blow to George Russell. Mercedes had the potential for pole in Friday's qualifying, but taking the sweeping final sector corners on soft tires for the first time drained the battery more than expected. This caught the energy management software off guard, cutting power. However, the front row start on Saturday confirms that the Silver Arrows are serious contenders for victory on a track with cool conditions that challenge front-end grip. Both Mercedes drivers express even greater confidence in their race pace than in their qualifying performance, ensuring Max Verstappen will not have an easy night ahead, also considering his one-place penalty that gives pole to the British driver. Ferrari, on the other hand, manages to adjust its balance on soft tires, eliminating some of the bothersome understeer from the first day of track action. However, these improvements are not enough to surpass their title rivals. Ferrari continues to struggle with imperfect tire preparation, In Q3, the Maranello team's drivers are the only ones to complete just one warm-up lap. Charles Leclerc requested an additional warm-up lap before his final attempt, but there was not enough time to accommodate this. The challenge is not just bringing the tires up to temperature, but doing so without degrading them before the flying lap, while also balancing front and rear temperatures perfectly. The final result reflects the potential of a car ill-suited to the Qatar circuit and less competitive over a single lap, though both Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz express optimism for the race. The goal will be to do everything possible in order to finish ahead of McLaren. Saturday's sprint saw a McLaren 1-2, achieved through excellent teamwork and drag reduction system utilization, earning the team an additional 6-point advantage over Ferrari in the standings. However, it's impossible to draw conclusions about race pace due to subsequent setup changes, and because the pace of the lead group was essentially dictated by Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris appeared capable of pulling away but managed his pace to provide DRS to his teammate. Even so, he expressed concern over the radio about his front tires losing grip. When the British driver did accelerate on rare occasions, Oscar Piastri seemed to struggle to match his pace, reinforcing the impression of a vulnerable McLaren. Ferrari benefited from using nearly new medium tires, allowing the Monegasque driver to close the gap on his future teammate Lewis Hamilton, who was on tires 5 laps older. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz kept up with the lead group's pace. The Maranello team approaches Sunday's race with just one set of hard tires available, but all signs point to a one-stop strategy. Ferrari has the advantage of being the only team to have tested the hard compound during Friday's practice, aiming to put pressure on a McLaren team that now faces its first match point to claim a world championship 26 years in the making. A challenging race, therefore, awaits Ferrari, not only due to the competitiveness of their rivals, but also because of the need to recover positions on the track, a task that proved difficult during the sprint race. However, there is room to hope for something more significant. Max Verstappen himself, after securing pole position yesterday, which later turned into second place following a penalty, was notably surprised by the change in his Red Bull's competitiveness after the setup modifications made after the sprint race. Ferrari team principal Frederic Vasseur hopes the race at the Lusail International Circuit can offer new scenarios in terms of management, but to aspire for more than what has been seen so far, Ferrari will need to handle these scenarios better than their rivals. Simulations conducted by the teams after the sprint race have altered initial predictions, opening the possibility of covering the 57 laps with a single stop. Ferrari believed in this option from Friday, choosing to work with the hard compound in the free practice session and immediately showing confidence with this compound. Ferrari will have one last chance to delay the Constructors' Championship assignment to Abu Dhabi, but after the sprint race it has become clear that the road ahead is very uphill.